Moving to Australia in 2025 could cost you more than you think, and most people find out too late. You see the beaches, the safety, the promise of a better life. You hear about the economy, the wages, the work-life balance. You scroll through Instagram. Bondi Beach, Sydney Harbour, happy families at barbecues. You see migrants who made it, the success stories, the celebration posts, and you believe it. But wait. Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment "I subscribe" below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Between 2023 and 2024, over 730,000 people migrated to Australia. That's the highest intake in the country's history. Most came for opportunity, for stability, for their kids. They believe the same thing you believe right now. That it'll be hard at first, that there will be challenges, that adjustment takes time, but that eventually it'll be worth it. Here's what nobody tells you. Most don't make it to worth it. Not because they're not qualified, not because they didn't try, but because the moment you land, the clock starts, and the costs don't stop. What you see on social media is the 1%. The ones who had money, the ones who had connections, the ones who got lucky. For everyone else, they're a brutal reality that nobody prepared them for. And it starts before you even arrive. Let's start with what it takes just to get in. A skilled independent 189 visa, the one most qualified workers apply for, costs 4,640 Australian dollars per person. For a family of 3, that's $13,920. Just to apply. Not guaranteed. Not refundable if rejected. But that's just the visa itself. You also need police checks from every country you've lived in for more than 12 months. That's $100 to $300 per country. Medical examinations from approved doctors. $400 to $600 per person. Document translations. Certified copies. Qualification assessments. By the time you add it all up, you're looking at another $2,000 to $4,000 in hidden costs. So that family of 3, they're actually paying $16,000 to $18,000 before they even board the plane. And the wait? 12 to 18 months. Sometimes longer. During that time, you in limbo. Can't sell your house because what if the visa gets rejected? Can't quit your job. Can't fully commit to leaving. But you're spending money on applications, on lawyers, on documents, and your life is on pause. But let's say you get approved. You arrive. You're excited. You've saved. You've planned. And then reality hits immediately. Here's where it breaks down. To rent a home in Sydney or Melbourne, you need a bond, usually 4 weeks rent, plus 4 weeks upfront. For a 2-bedroom apartment in Sydney, that's $3,000 for the bond and another $3,000 for the first month. $6,000 minimum. Before you've unpacked. But you don't have Australian rental history. No local credit score. No references landlords trust. So they reject you. And while you apply to 30, 40, 50 properties, you're staying in temporary accommodation. Motels, Airbnbs, serviced apartments. That's $150 to $250 per night. 4 weeks, sometimes months. One family from the Philippines spent $18,000 in temporary housing before securing a lease. 7 months of rejections. 7 months of watching their savings disappear. Every morning, refreshing real estate websites. Every afternoon, attending inspections with 40 other families. Every evening, submitting applications that go nowhere. And that's before groceries. Let's talk about what it actually costs to live here. Median rent in Sydney for a 2-bedroom apartment is now $750 per week. That's $3,250 a month. $39,000 a year. Just for rent. And what does $750 a week get you? In most cases, a 70 square meter apartment, 40 minutes from the city, built in the 1980s, with no air conditioning and street parking only. Compare that to what $750 a week would get you back home. In India, that's a luxury 3-bedroom apartment with security, gym, and pool. In the Philippines, that's a 4-bedroom house in a gated community. In the UK, that's a mortgage payment on a 3-bedroom home you'd actually own. But in Australia, it's the baseline. And you own nothing. Now let's talk groceries. A family of 4 spends $400 to $500 per week on food. That's $24,000 a year. Milk is $2.50 for 2 liters. Bread is $4 a loaf. A kilogram of chicken breast is $14. A basic weekly shop, no luxuries, no treats, is $180 to $220. And if you're used to cooking with ingredients from home, you're paying double or triple at specialty stores. Childcare, if you have kids and need to work, costs $120 to $150 per day per child. And for the first 12 months, you're not eligible for government subsidies. So if you have 2 kids in daycare 4 days a week, that's $4,000 a month. $48,000 a year. That's a full salary, just for childcare. Transport. Most migrants don't live in the inner city. You need a car. Fuel is $2.10 per liter. A full tank costs $100 to $120 and lasts a week if you're commuting. Insurance is $1,500 to $3,000 a year depending on your driving record, which doesn't transfer from overseas. So even if you've been driving for 20 years without an accident, Australian insurers treat you like a brand new driver. And then there are utilities. A standard dental cleaning costs $200 to $300. A filling, $150 to $400. Root canal, $2,000 to $3,500. If your kid needs braces, that's $6,000 to $10,000. Eye tests and glasses aren't covered. That's $300 to $600 per person. And if you need a specialist, a dermatologist, a cardiologist, a psychiatrist, the Medicare rebate covers maybe 40% of the bill. You're paying $200 to $400 out of pocket per visit. Emergency departments are overwhelmed. If you go to a public hospital with a non-life-threatening issue, you're waiting 8 to 12 hours. Broken wrist. Wait. Severe infection. Wait. Chest pain that isn't a heart attack. Wait. And if you're dealing with stress, anxiety, or depression after migration, and many migrants are, the waiting list for a bulk-billed psychologist is 6 months. Private psychologists charge $200 to $300 per session. You get 10 subsidized sessions per year through a mental health care plan. After that, you're paying full price. Private health insurance helps, but it costs $3,000 to $6,000 a year for a family. And even with insurance, there are gap fees, waiting periods, exclusions. You're paying for healthcare in a country that's supposed to have public healthcare. Now let's talk housing instability. In Australia, renters have almost no rights. Landlords can issue a 30-day no-cause eviction notice in several states. You could be paying on time, keeping the place immaculate, being a model tenant, and you can still be forced out because the owner wants to sell, or move in a relative, or just feels like it. And right now, rental competition is brutal. In Melbourne and Sydney, it's common to see 100+ applications for a single property. People are offering 6 months rent up front just to secure a place. Some are offering 12 months up front. Families are being priced out of neighborhoods, forced further from the city, further from work, further from schools. Commute stretched to 2-3 hours a day. Let me tell you about Marco. Filipino. 2 kids aged 6 and 8. Both parents working full-time. They arrived in Melbourne in early 2024. They applied to 90 rental properties over 3 months. Rejected every single time. They live in a motel for 7 months. $1,400 a week. Eating takeaway because there was no kitchen. Kids doing homework on the bed. When they finally secured a lease, it was 50 kilometers from the city. Rent was still $650 a week. The house was old, drafty, no heating. Marco now spends 3 hours a day commuting. His wife changed jobs to something closer but lower paid. Their kids changed schools twice. Lost their friends twice. That's the part nobody plans for. And if you have kids, the pressure escalates. Public schools in Australia vary wildly by postcode. Some are excellent, well-funded, high-performing. Many are overcrowded, under-resourced, and struggling. Your address determines your child's educational future. If you can't afford to live in the good postcodes, your kids go to the struggling schools. Class sizes of 30+. Teacher shortages. Limited extracurricular programs. So parents, especially migrants who moved across the world for their children's future, start looking at private schools. Private school fees in Sydney and Melbourne range from $15,000 to $40,000 per year. Per child. That's not elite schools. That's mid-tier private schools. If you have 2 kids, that's $30,000 to $80,000 a year. After tax. If you can't afford it, your child stays in the struggling public school. And if that school can't support them, they fall behind. You move across the world for opportunity. And now you're watching your kids lose it. This is the part nobody plans for. So let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Australia has the highest migration program in its history. 730,000 people in 1 year. But here's the infrastructure reality. Housing stock has only increased by 8% since 2020. Hospital capacity? Barely changed. Public transport investment? Hasn't kept pace. Electricity bills in summer and winter, when you're running heating or cooling, can hit $400 to $600 per quarter. Internet is $80 to $100 a month. Phone plans are $40 to $60 per person. Let me give you a real example. Priya moved from India in 2023. She's a software engineer. She got a job earning $95,000. That's well above the median wage. Sounds like success, right? Here's her annual breakdown. Rent, $36,000. Groceries, $20,000. Childcare, $38,000. Transport, insurance, registration, $8,000. Utilities and internet, $4,000. That's $106,000 in expenses. She earned $95,000. She went backwards. And she had a skilled job in a high-demand field. That's survival, not thriving. And that's just the financial side. This is the part nobody plans for. You arrive with qualifications, experience, a career you build over 10, 15, 20 years. And Australian employers look at it and say, we don't recognize this. Your nursing degree from the UK needs reassessment by the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency. Cost, $2,000. Timeline, 6 months. Maybe longer. Your engineering credentials from India? Same thing. Assessment by Engineers Australia. Cost, $3,500. Timeline, 12 to 18 months. Your teaching qualification from the Philippines? Every state has different requirements. You might need to study additional units. That's $5,000 in another year. So while you wait, while your credentials are being assessed, you need to work. But you can't work in your field. So you take survival jobs. Retail, hospitality, warehouses, delivery driving, Uber. You're a trained professional earning $25 an hour stacking shelves. Let me tell you about Ahmed. He was a doctor in Egypt. 20 years of experience. Specialized in emergency medicine. He moved to Australia in 2022 with his wife and 2 kids. His medical degree needed reassessment. That process took 2 years. During those 2 years, Ahmed drove Uber. 12-hour shifts. 6 days a week. Earning $35,000 a year. He had been saving lives in Cairo. Now he was driving strangers to the airport. And is not alone. A 2024 study found that 42% of skilled migrants were underemployed in their first 3 years. That's not an adjustment period. That's structural. And here's the worst part. Even when your credentials get recognized, you face the Australian experience catch-22. Employers want local experience. But you can't get local experience without a job in your field. So you're stuck. Overqualified for the survival jobs. Underexperienced for the career roles. And if you want a visa with work restrictions, employers see you as a risk. What if your visa gets cancelled? What if you have to leave? They hire the local candidate instead. And here's something nobody talks about. Wage theft is rampant in the industries where migrants end up. Cash-in-hand jobs paying below minimum wage. Unpaid overtime. Penalty rates ignored. You're a visa holder. You're vulnerable. And employers know it. You don't complain because you can't risk your visa status. So you work. And you're exploited. But it gets worse. Let's talk about the human cost. The part that doesn't show up in budgets or expense spreadsheets. You left behind your family. Your parents. Your siblings. Your closest friends. In Australia, you're starting from zero. No one to call when you're overwhelmed. No one to watch your kids in an emergency. No one who understands your language, your humor, your culture. Building a real social network takes 2 to 5 years. Not acquaintances. Real friends. People you can rely on. And that isolation is crushing. Your kids are struggling too. They miss their grandparents, their cousins, their old school. In Australia, they are the new kid. The one with the accent. The one who doesn't understand the slang or the social rules. Bullying is common. Exclusion is common. And Australian schools aren't always equipped to support kids from non-English speaking backgrounds. Your child falls behind. Their confidence drops. They beg to go home. Then there's your relationship. You and your partner are under more stress than you've ever been under. Financial pressure, isolation, regret, blame. This was your idea. You said it would be better. Divorce rates among recent migrants are 30% higher than the general population. Because migration doesn't just test your finances. It tests everything. And when crisis hits, illness, job loss, family emergency back home, you have no safety net. No family to fall back on. No community support. No one. Data from 2023 shows that 1 in 4 skilled migrants seriously consider leaving within 5 years. And if you go online, if you look at the forums, the Facebook groups, the Reddit threads, they are filled with the same thing. I wish someone had told me. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. I've never felt more alone in my life. Here's where it breaks down even further. Let's talk healthcare. You've heard Australia has Medicare, public healthcare, free hospitals. That's true. For emergencies. If you have a heart attack, you'll be treated. If you break your leg, you'll be treated. But Medicare doesn't cover dental, doesn't cover optical, and mental health. Extremely limited. School infrastructure, same story. The population is growing faster than the systems designed to support it. And migrants are absorbing the gap. You're waiting longer for healthcare, competing harder for housing, paying more for less. And here's the thing. The government knows. This isn't an accident. This isn't poor planning. This is policy. Australia's economy depends on population growth, on skilled migration, on international students. It keeps wages down, property prices up, GDP growing, universities profit, property investors profit, employers profit. And who pays? The migrants themselves. You pay the visa fees, the rent, the childcare, the healthcare gaps. You work the survival jobs. You wait for credential recognition. You rebuild from zero. You compete with 100 other families for housing. You sacrifice your career, your mental health, your relationships. And the entire time, you are told, you chose this. And that's just the beginning. Because the infrastructure crisis is accelerating. More migrants are arriving every year. But the housing, the hospitals, the schools, they are not keeping up. The gap is widening. And you're in it. So let's be clear about what's really happening. You're not moving to opportunity. You're moving into a crisis you expected to solve yourself. The government welcomes you economically, but not structurally. Australia needs your skills, your labor, your taxes, your contribution, but it doesn't provide the infrastructure to support you. You're filling workforce gaps while living in motels. You're paying for private healthcare in a country with public systems. You're competing with 100 other families for a rental while landlords have all the power. You're watching your credentials go unrecognized while you drive Uber with a master's degree. You're rebuilding your entire life, social, professional, financial, with no safety net. And when you struggle, when you break, when you regret, you're told it's your fault. You didn't plan well enough. You didn't save enough. You didn't adjust fast enough. But here's the truth. The system isn't designed for you to thrive. It's designed for you to survive just enough to keep contributing. You're not the beneficiary of migration. You're the buffer. Australia needs you desperately. The economy depends on skilled migration. Always has. But the infrastructure to support you, it doesn't exist. So you pay the price. Financially, emotionally, professionally. You sacrifice. You adapt. You endure. While being told you should be grateful. So if Australia needs you more than you need Australia, why are you the one paying the price?